What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey Mayor-Larry. So today, big day in college football. BC will be playing Notre Dame at 2:30, so just an hour until kickoff, just about right now. UMaine football playing their last game of the season versus UNH. I'm going to break down what's happened in the first half of that game, and then also talk about the MLB, what's going on there with the last day. Yesterday was the deadline for people to tender contracts, so for general managers to tender players' contracts. If they go non-tender like Cody Bellinger, that means they become a free agent. So Cody Bellinger is now a free agent. Or if you tender a guy, then they end up coming back to your team. So there's only a couple guys that were tendered, I believe, overall. And one of those was Jock Peterson of the San Francisco Giants. So I'm going to talk about a lot of the decisions the teams are making over the last 24 hours. And then also talk about UMaine basketball getting a big win yesterday over Columbia. And also talk about BC basketball. They got a big win yesterday over George Mason. They were underdogs heading into that game in the Paradise Jam tournament. BC ended up getting a win, so that was big. And I apologize for any noise outside. I am outside right now. Sunny day here in Boston. It's probably 40, 45 degrees. Not really that warm, but it is sunny. So you stand in the sun, it's not too bad. But anyways, talk about that, and then I'll also talk about Northeastern hockey getting a big 2-0 win over BU last night at Agganis Arena. So I'll start off with UMaine basketball. Got a big win yesterday against Columbia, winning that game 93-70, a 23-point win. That actually marks their first two-game win streak versus Division I opponents since the 2019-2020 season. They beat BC, obviously, on Monday night, then had a big win yesterday against Columbia, winning that game by 23 points. So very impressive for UMaine. And the start of the year hot, obviously being now 3-1, a lot better than they were last year. They did struggle last year, which I'm going to get into in a second, but very impressive getting a 23-point win last night against Columbia, a team they lost to last year in the regular season before they got Chris Mockwood as their head coach. And as you could tell, this team can play. And now this is actually the second straight game Maine outscored their opponent. So BC being their last opponent before yesterday, and then Columbia yesterday. They outscored BC and Columbia in both the first half and second half of both of those games. So 4 for 4 in those two games. They've outscored their opponent in each of those halves. So very impressive. And as you could tell, UMaine basketball 3-1 on the year. This is better than they did all last year. UMaine basketball struggled as a team last year. They ended up getting a new head coach. New head coach that ends up being Chris Mockwood, from a Northeastern assistant head coach for years. He was the associate head coach at Northeastern, then actually came to BC to be an assistant coach. And he's been great for them. And not only are they winning games, they're winning games against a big school. BC, that's a big win. They only lost by 13 points to Nebraska. They were 21-point underdogs in that game, I believe. Only lost by 13 points at Nebraska to start the year. And if you look at what they were last year, I mean, this team was not competitive at all last year. This team was struggling for the most part last year. 6-23 record overall, 3-15 in the conference. And they lost some bad games last year. If you look at it, lost by 11 points to Columbia last year, lost by 26 points to Quinnipiac, lost by 2 points to Merrimack, lost by 16 points to Rutgers, lost by 3 points to the New Jersey Institute of Technology, lost by 8 points to Stony Brook. I mean, this team is struggling last year. 8 points to Central Connecticut State, who they're going to be playing in their next game now on Wednesday of this upcoming week, right before Thanksgiving. Now they're winning some games. Now they're winning some big games. And that's the thing about UMaine basketball that I liked when I saw in their game against BC, was they play very hard and very strong. Even if they're playing a big opponent like BC, and BC is a Power 5 school, obviously have struggled over the years now in basketball for the last 5 to 7 years, but they're playing a school, a BC, Power 5 school, obviously in New England, and obviously a tense environment being a Conti Forum, with BC being 2-0 heading into that game. I know the 2 wins are reversed Detroit Mercy and Cornell, but regardless, 2-0 going into that game, BC was favored by 20 points. Maine went in and just were fearless. They were fearless. That's what I liked about that team. They played very hard, very strong, which I'm going to get into in a second. But they played in that game very fearless, very strong, and then they end up going against Columbia yesterday, now improved to 3-1 on the year. So impressive start to the year for UMaine. And as I said, they struggled last year. I mean, look at their record last year in their division. I mean, they were struggling in the conference, 3-15 overall in the conference. Finished the season on a 3-game losing streak, unfortunately. We're 1-14 away, 5-9 at home, and had some bad losses. One of them being by 8 points to Central Connecticut State, losing to Bradley by 32 points, Columbia by 11 points, Quinnipiac by 26 points. I mean, they just struggled as a whole last year. And as I said, now with Chris Mockwood as their head coach, comes in, obviously brings a different viewpoint. He's seen what it takes to get a team to March Madness. Obviously with Northeastern going to March Madness twice during his time there at Northeastern, and obviously last year at BC, winning a couple of big ACC tournament games. He knows what it takes to win. He was under Bill Cohen as the head coach at Northeastern. He was the associate head coach for Northeastern for some years. With Bill Cohen, a great college basketball coach, very historic coach in Boston sports for college athletics. And he sees and knows what it takes to win, and I think that's what he brought to UMaine, is a veteran viewpoint. And that's what you need. You need to play solid defense, solid offense, and you need to be great in transition, get rebounds, be great in the paint. And that's what UMain's been doing in the first 4 games of the season, now 3-1. It's a very impressive start to the year. And as I said, now it's their second straight game outscoring their opponent in the first half and in the second half. Both of those respective halves now being 4-0 in their last 2 games, outscoring their opponents. So they're dominating the first half and the second half. It's not just like they're starting games hot and then tail off towards the end. They've been dominating, honestly, overall, especially in that Columbia and BC game, as I said. So yesterday, Kellen Tynes of Maine continued to impress like he has in the first 4 games of the season, shooting 10 of 13 from the floor with 21 points, 3 rebounds, 4 steals, 2 blocks, and 2 assists. Very impressive on defense, 2 blocks, 4 steals. He's just been a force all over the floor. In that BC game, he had a big steal with about a minute to go to get UMaine the ball back to chew some time off the clock and then end up setting up UMaine for some free throws to end the game and obviously give them the victory. So very impressive start to the year for Kellen Tynes. I love what I've seen from him. UMaine yesterday led in assists over Columbia 19-8. They're not afraid to pass the ball around, and they're very unselfish. Always looking for that open shot of that guy that could drive down the lane and then kick it out for the 3. So very unselfish way to play the game of basketball. It's worked out for them. They're 3-1. Another thing they do well is shooting. They were 11 of 18 from the 3-point line yesterday, 61.1%. That's very impressive. 61.1% from 3 yesterday. They were 12 of 15 at the free throw line, so shot 80% from the free throw line for the second straight game. And they turned the ball over just 8 times against Columbia, and Columbia turned the ball over 14 times. 10 steals for UMaine yesterday over Columbia's 1. 7 blocks for UMaine to Columbia's 1 yesterday. So 7 blocks, 10 steals to Columbia's 1-1. So between blocks and steals, UMaine had 17 of those combined to Columbia's 2. That's dominance right there on defense. Dominance. And UMaine plays the game right, as I said. They shoot free throws well, knock down threes, limit turnovers by protecting the ball, and they play aggressive defense and force turnovers. And with those turnovers, they get points. They're not afraid to go in transition. They're not afraid to drive down the lane. They were out-rebounded yesterday, but they were out-rebounded BC, which is more impressive than if they were to out-rebound Columbia yesterday. But they're a good team. This team can play, and Mike Hurley, sports guru, knows. I know. We watched that UMaine game, but obviously we talked about it on my radio show. This team can play, and I'm excited to see what they do for the rest of the year. Now, Wednesday, they'll be playing against Central Connecticut State for their last game before the Thanksgiving break. So hopefully they'll improve to 4-1 in that game. That'll be a big game for UMaine. Excited to see what they do in that game. As you guys know now, I'm a big UMaine super fan, as is Mike Hurley. So that'll be exciting to watch. As a BC basketball, they got a big win yesterday, improved to 3-1 on the year. Going into that game against George Mason, they were 3-point underdogs in that Paradise Jam tournament against George Mason. BC ended up winning by 15 points, 71-56. So very impressive. Had 17 points from Mekhi Ashton Langford, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, and a steal. He was 7-15 from the floor and 1 2 from the 3-point line. DeMar Langford returned from the floor as a starter, had 9 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists, shooting 4 of 10 from the floor and 0 of 1 from 3. And Jaden Zachary had 7 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and was 2 of 5 from the floor. TJ Bickerstaff, 6 points, 4 rebounds, a steal, 3 steals, and an assist. So impressive on the defensive end with 3 steals there. As for George Mason, Victor Bailey, 15 points, 7 rebounds, a steal, and shot 6 of 14 from the field and 2 of 4 from 3. So not a bad game for them. I pointed out Victor Bailey's a player to watch out for. He had 15 points. That's a pretty good game for him. But obviously, ultimately, George Mason ends up getting that loss yesterday. And now BC will be playing Tarleton State tomorrow. In that game in the Paradise Jam tournament. Tarleton State on the year, 2-1. They beat Belmont in the first game of the tournament, 89-79 yesterday. They are 2-1 on the year, lost to Arizona State to start the year at Arizona State by 3 points. So obviously they've started the year impressive, being 2-1, beating Belmont, who's made March Madness a few times now over the past few years, and then Arizona State losing only by 3 points to them to start the year, playing a Pac-12 opponent in a Pac-12 building to start the year is never easy, especially for a small school like Tarleton State. But the Texans end up losing that game by only 3 points. They are 2-1. As a BC, they only shot 61% from the free throw line yesterday. That's one thing that has to be better. 11 of 18 from the free throw line. But at the end of the day, got a big win. They were underdogs in that game against George Mason. George Mason, as I said in my radio show, they were 2-1 heading into that game. Only lose by 18 points to Auburn to start the year. You would think only 18, that's still a big loss, but Auburn's the number 13 team in the country, and playing at Auburn to start the year is never easy. Just like playing at Arizona State to start the year isn't an easy opponent either. Ended up beating Longwood in their second game and beating American University by 17 points in the third game. So impressive win for BC yesterday over George Mason. Now I'm going to move on really quick to talk about UMaine football. Right now they're playing their last game of the season. They are playing the number 18 FCS school in UNH. They are home right now. UMaine is a home team versus UNH. UNH, number 18 team in the FCS on the year ranking-wise, so that's very impressive. UNH is up right now 21-14 at half. So UMaine obviously still has a ways to go to win this game, but they are down 7 points. And if you look at it, UMaine really just has had bad luck. They've lost their last 4 games, all by 10 points or less, including 3 of those 4 games by 4 points or less they've lost by. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games by 4 points or less. And their record now in the year is 2-8. So you're going to look at it and say, oh, this team's bad. But at the end of the day, this team has fight, they have heart, and 2-8 could easily be 6-4 if 4 of those games that didn't go their way in the last few minutes, they got wins in. Let's say they get 3 wins in those games, right? Let's say they get 3 wins. They'd be 5-5 on the year with a chance to win their 6th game of the year and end the year 6-5. So just things haven't gone their way in closing parts of games. And if you saw last week, they were screwed over against Albany. They handed Albany that win. The referees handed Albany that win. The last 7 plays of the game, I'm going to break it down really quick. With 1:53 to go, they took the lead. With 1:50 to go, UMaine took the lead with the Joe Fagnana touchdown run, 6-yard run by UMaine's quarterback. Ended up taking the lead, and they ended up losing that game 23-21. And I'm going to break down the last 7 plays of the game for UMaine on defense. Albany had the ball, 1st and goal. 1st down, incomplete pass. 2nd and goal, incomplete pass. 3rd and goal, penalty on UMaine, sets up Albany even closer. 1st and goal now from the 3-yard line. 1st and goal from the 3-yard line, incomplete. 2nd and goal from the 3-yard line, penalty on UMaine. Now it's once again 1st and goal, half the distance from the 2-yard line. Incomplete pass on 1st and goal now from the 2, but penalty on Maine. Then 1st and goal on the 7th play of the drive, inside the 10-yard line, now this being on the 1-yard line, touchdown for Albany. So overall, in the last 7 plays of the game, there were 6 straight passing completions and 3 penalties in 4 plays, and ended up handing UMaine that loss 23-21 to Albany. And as I said, they took the lead off a 6-yard touchdown run by quarterback Joe Fagnana with a minute to go, a minute 50 to go. And today, now they're down 21-14 at half. And I was listening to the play-by-play, and the announcer, Rich, made a great point. He said resiliency to overcome all of these obstacles is very impressive for UMaine. And a lot of fight in this team that shows they just never give up. This team is a lot of fight and just shows they never give up. And that's why I like UMaine football. That's why I liked them when they came to BC. I saw something in that team, and I love the Clippers because they hustle and play hard. And a lot of players I like, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, hockey, I love players that hustle. And that UMaine team hustled. UMaine gave it their all in that BC game, and as you can tell now, they're still playing hard. So now I'm going to break down some stats for UMaine football on the year. Joe Fagnana, quarterback, redshirt sophomore, 14 touchdowns and 6 picks. Against Albany last week, had 164 passing yards, a touchdown, a pick, and 10 carries for 46 yards with a rushing touchdown. As I said, that rushing touchdown gave UMaine the lead with a minute 50 seconds to go. They ended up getting the loss, unfortunately. Wide receiver Montego Moss for UMaine has been the highest scoring receiver on the year with 31 catches for 340 yards and a team-leading 6 touchdowns on the year. And I'm looking for a big game from him today, hopefully. As I said, UMaine finds themselves down 21-14 at half to UNH. And then running back Elijah Barnwell on the year has 487 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. Heading into today's game, he already has 2 rushing touchdowns already in the first half. So make that 6 rushing touchdowns on the year for Elijah Barnwell, a transfer from Rutgers to UMaine. It's a very impressive year for him. Against URI a few weeks ago, had 20 carries and 98 yards and a touchdown. And now, once again, getting a chance to score today with 2 rushing touchdowns. So UMaine really has not caught a break, as I said last week. And that Albany game got screwed over in the last 7 plays of the game with 6 straight incompletions, with 3 penalties, ended up handing UAlbany that win, unfortunately. There's 3 penalties and 4 plays over that stretch in that 7-play stretch in the llast, 35, 45 seconds of that game. But UMaine ended up today getting screwed over once again. They had a pick taken away off a bad call, and then a touchdown to Santiago Moss taken away on an illegal block after Moss already had the catch for a score. They end up still scoring that drive on a run to Elijah Barnwell right before halftime. But either way, UMaine just has not caught a break at all in their games over the last few 4 to 5 games now. So tough, obviously, but I'm very impressed with what I've seen out of this team. They have a lot of fight. And even if they end the year 2-9, they still play hard, still play strong, give it their all. And that's what I like about UMaine football. That's what I like about UMaine basketball. They play very hard. And as you know, me and Mike Kerr, the sports guru, both of us being UMaine super fans now. So now I'm going to move on really quick to Northeastern basketball. They'll be playing today at Syracuse. Northeastern basketball really has been struggling, which I already previewed this game very quick on my radio show. So the insight I'm going to give now is just very brief, just because the game obviously is going to be tipping off in about 3 hours from now. The game tips off at 5 o'clock at the Carrier Dome. Northeastern obviously struggling on the year now, being 0-3. They are 14.5-point underdogs today at Syracuse. Syracuse is 1-1 on the year with an 18-point win over Lehigh, and then just lost to Colgate by 8 points on Tuesday night at home. So hopefully Northeastern maybe catches them on a downtrend here. Losing to Colgate by 8 points is a tough way to start the year. As for Northeastern, 0-3 to start the year. Just lost by 1 point on Wednesday night at home to Harvard in their home opener, losing that game 70-69 at Matthews Arena. One thing for Northeastern, though, that hopefully turns around is that in their last 24 games, they're 3-21. They only have 3 wins in the last 24 games. Hopefully at some point they turn that around in a big win today. Who knows? Against Syracuse could do that. I think today might be a tough game for them. But just to be optimistic, if they were to win this game against Syracuse, then they'd play Manhattan and Georgia Tech. Manhattan, that would be in the tournament they'd be playing in for Thanksgiving. That game will be on Thursday on Thanksgiving at noon against Manhattan. Then after the tournament ends, whoever they play in that second game, I'm not sure yet. But then after the tournament ends, they'll be playing Georgia Tech after Thanksgiving on Friday, December 2nd at Georgia Tech. That'll be a tough game. But if they could just turn things around, maybe win one game to start, and then just end up going on a hot streak, which they struggled in the conference last year. I think hopefully this year in the CAA, they win 8 to 10 games rather than the 1 or 2 they won last year. So hopefully things turn around for Northeastern. Typically they dominate in the Colonial Athletic Association, the CAA for short. But this year and last year has been a struggle, as you can tell, losing only winning 3 of their last 24 games, being 3-21 of the last 24. So hopefully things turn around for Northeastern, but obviously it starts with winning one game to turn things around. So really quick, now I'm going to break down some news across the MLB, and then that'll be the end of this episode. I'm going to make it really quick about the non-tender versus tended players over the last 24 hours. Cody Bellinger, to start off, was non-tendered by the LA Dodgers, was due $18 million in arbitration. The former MVP in 2019 is only 26 years old, but struggled the last 3 seasons at the dish. His first 3 years in the MLB, very impressive. From 2017 to 2019, in 450 games, had 111 home runs, 288 RBIs, with a 278 batting average to go along with a 928 OPS in his first 3 years. So very impressive first 3 years from 2017 to 2019. Then you look at it. His next 3 seasons from 2020 to 2022, 41 home runs in 295 games with 134 RBIs, a 201 batting average, and a 644 OPS. So all in all, now I'm going to compare it from his first 3 seasons to his next 3 seasons, first 3 seasons to his last 3 seasons, okay? He hit 39 home runs as a rookie in 2017, had 47 home runs in 2019, and in that season in 2019, 47 home runs is more than he's had in his last 3 years combined together. 41 home runs in 3 seasons since hitting 47 home runs in 2019. And as I said, 47 home runs in 2019 is more than he's had in the 2020, 2021, and 2022 MLB seasons altogether. So obviously things have changed for him. This year was a struggle, 210 batting average with 19 home runs, 68 RBIs, and a 654 OPS. And it looks like the LA Dodgers, after non-tendering him, allowing him to be a free agent, means he would not be back in a Dodgers uniform next year. The LA Dodgers now overall have cleared up about $100 million off the books between non-tendered players and players that are free agents from last year's club that are now going to be gone. And it looks like it overall, with that $100 million off, it looks like they're going for another superstar. That could be Aaron Judge. Maybe they make a move at Aaron Judge. Maybe they're making room to try to get Trey Turner back, even though I think Trey Turner is gone. Maybe they're making a move at Aaron Judge. And as you know, the LA Dodgers are not afraid to go make a big move. They trade for Max Scherzer and Trey Turner at the trade deadline in 2021. They signed Freddie Freeman in the 2022 offseason. They traded for Mookie Betts in 2020. They are not afraid to make a big move, as you can tell. So that's why I think this Dodgers team is not afraid to go out and try to get Aaron Judge. And especially if they talked about maybe moving Mookie Betts from right field to second base, they're not going to say that just as a joke. I think the Dodgers are for real. And maybe you could look at it as, maybe they just want to get the Giants to have to raise their price and maybe take more money off their books, because I know the San Francisco Giants are going to make a run at them. The New York Yankees, the New York Mets are all going to make a run at them. Maybe the Dodgers are just doing this and clearing money off the books to make it seem like they're going after Aaron Judge. And maybe that's just a way to try to get the price to go up higher so the San Francisco Giants have to pay more, and maybe there's more competition to help the Dodgers. But the more money the Dodgers offer for Aaron Judge, the more money other teams are going to offer. Maybe they look at it as, let's compete with other teams and make other teams have to spend more money. And at the end of the day, it comes down to that competition of who's going to spend more to get Aaron Judge. But they have cleared $100 million off the books between free agents and non-tended players. So I'm excited to see what they do in the offseason. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of the Dodgers and what they do. The Red Sox non-tended first baseman / outfielder Frangie Cordero ending his tenure with the Sox since being traded to Boston in that Andrew Benintendi deal. Never really caught fire as a Red Sox. He really struggled his whole tenure on the field. at first base and also at the dish. He just wasn't good at either of them. And obviously, at the end of the day, the Sox end up moving on. I think that's a good decision. The Minnesota Twins traded third baseman Gio Urshela, who they acquired in a deal last offseason with Gary Sanchez in a trade with the Yankees for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and Josh Donaldson. They ended up trading Gio Urshela yesterday to the LA Angels for a minor league pitcher. And as I said, Urshela was trading to Minnesota as a salary dump for the Twins to get rid of Josh Donaldson's contract last year to make room to sign Carlos Correa, who is also a free agent now as well. The Twins just released new uniforms yesterday, which I'm going to talk about them now for a second. They have new gray pinstripe away uniforms, which I think are pretty nice. They have a new hat with an M on it. The M is white, and then it also has a red star above it for the North Star, which is pretty cool. So I like the hat. I think it's pretty nice of a look. I think at the end of the day, it looks like the Miami Marlins maybe too much, but maybe that's what they were going for, just to try to switch things up. Obviously, teams that are struggling usually get new uniforms to try to get fans back locked in and maybe to add some excitement. But at the end of the day, the Twins have to put a better product on the field. They've been average the last few years, but they do have some good players. Obviously, now Carlos Correa being a free agent is not good, but they have Byron Buxton, Luis Arraez. They have some good players to build around. Hopefully, things turn around for them. And according to ESPN, this is actually the first time the Twins have worn a hat with an M on it since 2013. So obviously, they're switching things up. And they'll be showcasing the light of the M, as I said, from Minnesota with that North Star over it, which is pretty cool. It's a red star right on the top of the hat. They also have an alternate uniform now. The Twins are introducing a new alternate uniform with a cream base in the Twin Cities written across the chest. And they also have a new home uniform, which is a clean white jersey with the red Twins in cursive across the center of it. And that WIN, the win part of that Twins in that new home uniform, that white jersey, is underlined. And they had that when they won the World Series in 1987. So pretty cool look. I think at the end of the day, people are going to have a positive outlook and some are going to have a negative outlook on new uniforms. I always think new uniforms can be a cool thing, and hopefully we see them on the field. They have a better product on the field as well. So the new uniforms are not just a way to get fans back in. Rather, they're actually trying to win something. The New York Mets chose to not tender first baseman / outfielder Dom Smith, making him a free agent. He hit .244 last year with 11 home runs for the Mets. He was due $3.95 million in arbitration, and the Mets chose to move on from him. San Francisco Giants outfielder Jock Peterson accepted his $19.65 million qualifying offer from the Giants, only the second player to accept their qualifying offer this offseason. And if you look at it, there's a lot of guys that denied their qualifying offer that declined it, including Aaron Judge, Jacob deGrom, Trey Turner, Carlos Rodon, Brandon Nimmo, Xander Bogaerts, Anthony Rizzo, Nate Eovaldi, Dansby Swanson, Chris Bassett. All those guys are notable players that declined their qualifying offer. The Yankees signed Anthony Rizzo to a new 2-year, $34 million deal with a $17 million club option in year 3 of the deal, and that also includes a $6 million buyout. 33 years old is Rizzo, hit 32 home runs last year with a .224 batting average in that heart of that Yankees lineup. The Yankees also re-signed reliever Lou Trevino, who they acquired from the Oakland A's last year, to a 1-year, $4.1 million deal, so not a bad cheap deal there to help their bullpen out. The Yankees also signed infielder Isaiah Kiner-Falefa to a 1-year, $6 million deal to avoid arbitration. They got him in that deal last year with the Minnesota Twins. They'd already pointed out about a few minutes ago now when I was talking about Josh Donaldson and Gio Urshela and Gary Sanchez. The San Francisco Giants re-signed outfielder Mike Yastrzemski, the grandson of former great Sox catcher Kyle Yastrzemski, was signed to a 1-year, $6.1 million deal yesterday and a re-signed contract with the San Francisco Giants. The Toronto Blue Jays traded Teoscar Hernandez, an outfielder, to the Seattle Mariners in exchange for reliever Eric Swanson and a minor league prospect, Adam Macko. As for Hernandez, he was moved since Toronto really wanted to get some money off the books. They were going to be paying him a 1-year, $14 million deal in arbitration, and that's what he was owed this year, and they decided to move on from him rather than spend that $14 million. As for what they got back in return, especially considering Hernandez is 31 years old, maybe they want to go a little bit younger in the outfield. But if you look at what they got back in return, Eric Swanson, great return for the Blue Jays, 70 strikeouts in 53 2/3 innings last year with a 1.68 ERA and 57 appearances. And the Blue Jays need a bullpen help, so this move makes sense, obviously. They also got a minor league prospect as well in return, and that guy being Adam Macko. The Blue Jays also made another move earlier in the week, designating Raimel Tapia for assignment a few days ago. He had 265 in 1 year for Toronto with 7 home runs, 52 RBIs, a 672 OPS, and 8 stolen bases in 10 attempts. In 6 years for Colorado before going to the Blue Jays last year in a trade, he hit 19 home runs with 136 RBIs, a 280 batting average, a 325 on-base percentage, and a 721 OPS in 6 years with the Rockies, including stealing 20 stolen bases in 2021. So he has an ability to be a leadoff guy and also steal some bases. And obviously struggled last year with the Blue Jays and was a little bit lower in that order. But hopefully he finds a new home and succeeds somewhere else since I am a fan of him. And the last thing I want to talk about in the MLB, Billy Beane, former Executive of the Year in 2018 for the MLB, will be stepping away as the president of baseball operations for the Oakland A's. He will transition to a lighter role being the strategic advisor for the A's, so obviously lesser workload for him. And he's put in his time with the Oakland A's, 25 years as the head of the A's front office, including being the GM from 1997 to 2016. And was also the president of baseball operations up until now from 2016 to 2022 as well, including being the GM. So he's had a long tenure with the Oakland A's, as you can tell. 25 years, I sat at the helm of the Oakland A's front office. And now the question is, who's going to take over for him? It'll be David Forst, their GM for the Oakland A's. He will be stepping in for Billy Beane as the president of baseball operations, along with being the general manager. And if you look at it, he worked under Billy Beane for 22 years, so he knows what it takes and knows the ins and outs of what it takes to win and also build a team that can win off of one of the lowest payrolls in baseball and being able to compete with one of the biggest teams in baseball like the New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox. He knows what it takes, obviously, being a small market team, being with the Oakland A's for 22 years under Billy Beane. He knows what it takes to win. So I'm excited to see what he does for the Oakland A's. I've talked about it over the summer that the Oakland A's really need to get a new stadium. The Oakland Coliseum is a football stadium. No one goes to the games. They have one of the lowest attendance rates in baseball. And I talked about it before, having one of the lowest attendance rates in baseball also correlates with having one of the worst franchises win percentage-wise in baseball as well. They obviously have to figure things out there. But hopefully David Forst does well for them. And now Billy Beane will become the strategic advisor for the Oakland A's, so just a lesser role for him. Now he has a little bit less to do, also a lower responsibility than he had before being the president of baseball operations, especially being the head of that front office for 25 years. That's a lot of work. So now he'll have a little bit less to do, and he'll still be there giving his input, but it's all on David Forst now, the GM, and now the president of baseball operations to try to turn this franchise around, a team that's been struggling. Obviously, they've had some success over the years with Billy Beane creating that Moneyball mentality and strategy, which Moneyball, great movie, came out with Brad Pitt, I believe, in 2013. It was a book that was written in 2003, I believe. But that Moneyball strategy is when you're taking a small market team and trying to build it to compete with powerhouses like the Red Sox, like the Yankees, teams that spend a lot of money. You take a very small market team with a low payroll and trying to compete with the best teams. And the way you do that is obviously taking a player that people don't value as high, that's under the radar, and then giving him a $3 million deal, and then end up, seeing him succeed. And then obviously they end up not paying guys like they didn't pay Johnny Damon and Jason Giambi, both those guys leaving them during that Moneyball era for the Oakland A's in the early 2000s. But it's worked for them in the past, and hopefully they get back to that way of winning, since at the end of the day, baseball's better when there's more teams competing. And if you look at it, the Oakland A's have been struggling over the years. The Miami Marlins, that's two teams right there, the Detroit Tigers. Baseball's better when there's more teams competing, and hopefully things turn around for the Oakland A's. And as I said, I'm a big fan of that Moneyball movie with Brad Pitt. The movie came out 2017. I know I said earlier it came out 2014, I believe. It came out 2017, based on the 2003 book by Michael Lewis called Moneyball, The Art of Winning an Unfair Game. And if you look at the Oakland A's in 2001, won 102 games with one of the smallest payrolls in baseball, and then also with one of the lowest payrolls in baseball in 2002, won 103 games and ended up losing in the divisional round, I believe, to the Minnesota Twins. But at the end of the day, that team with one of the lowest payrolls in baseball was able to compete with some of the biggest franchises in all of baseball, like the New York Yankees, like the Boston Red Sox. And speaking of the Red Sox tried to get Billy Beane actually as the general manager. John Henry tried to get him, I believe it was in 2002 or 2003, tried to give him a contract offer to be the general manager for the Red Sox. He ends up declining it, staying with the Oakland A's, staying loyal to that franchise, ends up staying 25 years as a whole with them, and he'll stay there as a strategic advisor. But it was pretty impressive what he was able to do with the Oakland A's, taking a small market team like the Oakland A's and competing with some of the best franchises in all of baseball, like the Yankees and the Red Sox, because he was able to take that Moneyball strategy and that Moneyball formula to see a player that most teams didn't respect and undervalued take a guy, get him on the Oakland A's for cheap money, and then end up seeing him succeed because the analytics of baseball spoke more highly of that regarded player than what most general managers of the team saw. And that's what got them to be a 102-win team in the 2002 season. So very impressive tenure for Billy Beane as the Oakland A's president of baseball operations and general manager. And I'm excited to see what he does as a strategic advisor. As I said, the game of baseball is better when there's more teams competing. And in that Oakland A's Moneyball era, that really transformed the entire game of baseball. So I'm wishing him and the Oakland A's nothing but the best, and hopefully things work out for them. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Buffalo Bills. With their game with the Cleveland Browns being moved to Ford Field in Detroit, they actually end up having to move the game because of snow. 66 inches of snow in the last day or so, which is actually the highest 24-hour snow total ever recorded in the entire state of New York. Buffalo's got 66 inches of snow in the last 24 hours, and they end up moving that game to Ford Field for a 1 o'clock kickoff tomorrow. So we'll see what happens for that Buffalo Bills fan base. We'll see if they end up traveling to Detroit. As you guys know, the Bills have one of the most energetic and passionate fan bases in all of sports. So we'll see if they end up going to Detroit for that game, which I'm sure they will. But with that snow total, it's going to be hard to even fly or drive out of Buffalo, especially considering 66 inches of snow. That's 5 feet, 6 inches. That's just ridiculous. But before I want to close today's episode, I want to talk about Northeastern hockey really quick. Coming off a loss last weekend at Conti Forum, they lost 3-2 to BC. Going in last night to BU, who is very heavily ranked and obviously regarded in college hockey. I think they were number 4 in the RPI rankings and number 2 in the RPI rankings. Before last night's game, end up losing to Northeastern 2-0 last night. Northeastern getting that 2-0 win over BU at Agganis Arena. They got a third period goal from Cam Lund with an assist from Braden Doyle, former BU Terrier, before he transferred to Northeastern. Got the 1-0 lead off a Cam Lund goal, and then got a 2-0 lead off an empty net goal from Justin Retzkovian with an assist from Sam Colangelo and Gunnar Wolf Fontaine. Northeastern ends up getting that 2-0 win over BU, handing BU actually their first regulation loss at Agganis Arena at home in an entire calendar year. Their first loss at home in an entire calendar year, 365 days, which is actually nuts. Just shows how dominant BU has been at home over the last year, especially considering they became one of the hottest teams in all of college hockey last year and just went on a huge run to finish last season. And what a game from Devin Levi, Northeastern's goalie. Had 41 saves on 41 shots, including 19 shots faced in the third period. He saved all 19 of them. Northeastern was outshot in the third period, 19-6. Obviously, Northeastern started playing more defense than offense, trying to keep that 1-0 lead, especially after the Cam Lund goal. You have to feel pretty good with Devin Levi in net that you can win a 1-0 game. But very impressive finish for Northeastern in that game, winning that 2-0. And now we're playing today at Matthews Arena at 7 o'clock for another game, and a home-and-home, obviously the second part of that home-and-home against BU tonight. Hopefully Northeastern gets another win. Anyways, that does conclude today's episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this as always. I appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Thank you, and have a good one.